Hey everyone, welcome to this video about modern taxonomy tools. This week you're going to learn about modern taxonomy tools of cladograms and dichotomous keys, and you're also going to learn some vocabulary that will help you next week when we talk about animal classification. But in this video, we're just going to focus on the cladograms and the dichotomous keys. So here we go. What is a cladogram? Well, a cladogram is a diagram that shows the relationship between organisms based on the theory of evolution. So look at this cladogram. This is a diagram of different organisms in the tree of life, and this happens to be in the animal kingdom. And we have this fish here, and that's the simplest one in this cladogram. Then we can look and say, hey, after fish, we branch into a different branch of the tree of life where organisms have at least four limbs, and that includes the amphibians, and then going on reptiles, birds, rodents, and primates. So that kind of makes the rest of these organisms different from the fish. And if we continue on, well, out of this tree of life evolves the characteristic of having an amniotic egg, or a certain type of way that the offspring develop. And fish didn't have that, and amphibians didn't have that, but all of the rest of these ones have an amniotic egg. So reptiles, birds, rodents, and primates do. And then evolving from those organisms came these ones that have hair or fur, and that includes the rodents and the primates. So it's kind of based on the theory of evolution and relationships between organisms based on the characteristics that they have. It's a very nice visual tool that helps us understand how one group of organisms may be branched off from another group. So, question here, the relationships in a cladogram are based on the theory of evolution. And you can kind of see there, we say, oh, these ones evolved separately from these ones. These ones evolved and branched off. These ones evolved and branched off. And then from there, maybe the crocodile branched off and the bird branched off separately. That's based on the theory of evolution, how organisms changed over time and branched off into new species. All right, so cladograms. In cladograms, you will see different clades, and a clade is just one group where they all share a similar derived characteristic. A derived characteristic is a characteristic that appears in recent part of the lineage, but not in older members. So if you're looking at like what is a clade and what's not a clade, well, this is a clade, it's one group, and they all have this shared ancestor or shared derived characteristic. Over here, this is one clade highlighted in yellow, that all the organisms in that clade have one derived characteristic in common. Over here, though, these are not the same clade because in this line, they have a different derived characteristic there. And over here, they have a separate one from that first one because you can see they kind of branched off differently. So that's not considered one clade because they branched off separately. And same here for the same reason. This is not considered a clade because, hey, they all branched off from this, but we didn't include this line. And that doesn't make sense because that would have early on had that derived characteristic. So if we're looking on this diagram, we can see that mammals make up one clade here, and they're shown in pinkish reddish color, but they all have whatever derived characteristic comes in here. Reptiles and birds are in one clade that's purple, and they all have going back to this branch or derived characteristic. Amphibians are in one clade, and they go back to this derived characteristic, whatever that is. You can kind of start to see there are certain groups that have shared characteristics, and those are clades. So question, each group in a cladogram is called a clade. And which derived characteristic separates the lampreys from the tunas? So let's look at that. How do we know what derived characteristic separates one clade from the rest of the cladogram? So if we look at lampreys and tunas, this is a lamprey and this is a tuna. Okay, so let's go back. Lamprey, we're following back in this cladogram, and we see that lampreys, they did have a vertebral column, but they did not have jaws. Jaws is the derived characteristic that comes between lampreys and tuna. From here on down within the cladogram, everything has jaws. So tunas have jaws, salamanders have jaws, turtles have jaws, leopards have jaws, but only the organisms that come after that labeled derived characteristic of jaws have jaws. The ones that came before it, like the lamprey and the lancelet, they do not have jaws. So when you have a derived characteristic in a cladogram, that shows like a newly evolved characteristic that only applies to organisms thereafter. So you can see the derived characteristic that separates lamprey from tuna is jaws. And by the way, you can see that in the picture. This is a lamprey, kind of a freaky mouth, and this is a tuna. It does have a jaw. Which organisms are in the clade that has the derived characteristic of fur or mammary glands? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for fur and mammary glands. I see that here. And I want to know which ones are in a clade that has that derived characteristic. So I can't look before that. Salmon and salamander and lizard all come before fur and mammary glands, and they don't have that characteristic. But hamsters and chimpanzees come after fur and mammary glands. Hamsters and chimpanzees have the derived characteristic of fur and mammary glands. Which derived characteristic do salamanders have, but sharks don't have? Okay, so I know I want to look at for the difference between a salamanders and a shark. So I'm going to look at salamander. I'm going to go down in the cladogram, and I'm going to go a little bit back until I find a derived characteristic, which is lungs. Sharks come before lungs, so that means sharks don't have lungs. Salamanders come after lungs, which means salamanders do have lungs. So the derived characteristic is lungs. This next thing that I'm going to talk to you about, we're done with cladograms, but I'm going to talk to you now about dichotomous keys. And those are a step-by-step guide to help you identify an organism. And you always go in order with these steps. So let's look at this guy. This is a praying mantis right there. So I know that just because I'm familiar with praying mantis, but how would I have figured that out? Let's say I've never seen any of these bugs before, and I got to figure this out. What I have to always do first is go to step 1. And that it doesn't matter what kind of organism you're doing, you always start at step 1 in a dichotomous key. So I look at this organism right there, and I say, does it have 8 legs or does it have 6? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 6 legs. So that tells me the instruction says go to step 2. Does not have wings or has wings? Well, these little wide parts of it actually are wings. This has wings. So my next instruction is go to step 3. Front legs modified for grasping prey or not? Well, those have kind of funky looking front legs. They look different from the back legs. So I'm going to say yes, they do have legs that are modified for grasping prey. That's a praying mantis. So here's another kind of simplified. This isn't related to biological species, but this is just kind of an interesting way to think about it. These are some smiley faces, and this can kind of help us look at doing dichotomous keys. I'm going to choose to do this emoji, this one with the heart eye emoji. So let's go through the dichotomous key thinking about the heart eye emoji. So in the heart eye emoji, are teeth visible or not visible? Well, if I look at the heart eye emoji, I don't see teeth. So I'm going to say they're not visible. And I'm going to go to number 4. Remember, I always start at number 1 no matter what, but then I follow the instructions. So teeth are not visible. I go to number 4. All right, are the eyes symmetrical or are the eyes not symmetrical? Well, what that means is, are the eyes the same? Are both eyes just a heart? Yes, they are symmetrical. I'm going to follow the instructions and go to number 5. Are the eyes shaped like hearts? Yes, that's Smilus valentinus. That would be their made-up scientific name for this emoji right here. Let's try one more. Let's try this one, this funky-looking guy. Right there, I'm going to just call him a funky guy. All right, does the funky guy have teeth that are visible or not visible? Not visible. I don't see any teeth with this funky guy. So I'm going to go to number 4. Are his eyes symmetrical or not symmetrical? Are his eyes the same or not the same? They are not the same. These two are different. So I'm going to go to number 8 because they're not symmetrical. I'm going to skip to number 8. So I don't look at 5, 6, 7. I just go to number 8. Does he have a pirate eye patch? No, he does not have a pirate eye patch. So I need to go to number 9. Number 9. One eye is much larger than the other. Yes. This eye is way bigger than that eye. So we're going to call him Smilus matutus. And that's the name of this one. Hopefully you see from that how to use dichotomous key. I'm going to show you a couple more examples. Let's look at organism A, this first guy, and let's follow this dichotomous key. So this first guy, letter A, let's find out what is he. Okay. Starting at number 1, just like always in a dichotomous key. Does he have a green body? Yes. I'm going to number 2. Does he have 4 legs or does he have 8 legs? I see 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to follow these instructions. 4 legs, go to number 3. Does he have a tail? No, I don't see a tail. He does not have a tail. That means he's called Dirus magnus. I'm going to let you try a couple, and then I'll explain another one fully. So try B, this guy right here. Follow the instructions on the dichotomous key and see if you can name organism B. He's Dirus pestis. Okay, follow the instructions and see if you can name organism C. That's Dirus octigus. All right, let's look at letter D together. Let's look at this one together. So I'm going to follow the instructions. This one, does it have a green body? No. So I need to keep reading. Does it have a purple body? Yes. Go to number 4. I skip number 2. I skip number 3. I go to number 4. Does this one, letter D, have a pointy hump? No. Does it not have a pointy hump? Yes. So I'm going to go to number 5. Does it have ears? Yeah, it does have ears. So this one is called Dirus perplenis. All right, letter E. You try this one, letter E. Try him out. He's Dirus deafus. And lastly, try out letter F. That's Dirus humpus. All right, thank you so much for listening. If you have questions about cladograms or dichotomous keys, please reach out to me on email.